Okay, and welcome to Trek Live Episode 6. Not so live, though. We're pre-recording. I'm coming at you live via Comlink from Riza. My my shore leave is winding down, but wanted to take some time out to keep the ball rolling on what we're doing here on Trek Live. And although I'm in civvies, I'm not in my Trek Live uniform. I figured I got Dan's permission to forego the uniform for this episode. And speaking of Dan, I've got to take the opportunity to introduce the prime co-pilot of the Alpha Quadrant. And our topic for this week is Discovery. We're going to talk about kind of our initial thoughts and what we're hoping to see out of it. Like I said, we kind of want to just like Dan just said, we're trying to just get our stake in the ground as far as like what we're thinking at this early point. So Dan, what's when somebody brings up Discovery, Star Trek Discovery to you, what kind of comes to mind at this point? What are your initial thoughts, I guess, at this point?
I'm excited. Also hesitant. I'm excited in the fact that this is kind of my first experience to where I get to have a Star Trek show that's week to week. Previous, it's always been like I could easily just watch 8 episodes in a day. Now it's kind of going to be a little bit different, and I'm curious to see how that goes, because this is my first show that's just kind of week to week. So I'm kind of curious to see how that kind of changes my views of the show and how my love for the show develops. So, what about you?
It wouldn't be my first go around with weekly Star Trek. I have pretty vivid memories of going back to pretty early DS9 and early Voyager, and through Enterprise, I definitely experienced weekly. But it's been a long time. Obviously, Star Trek's been off the air for about a decade, a little over a decade now. So, like you, I'm kind of looking forward to getting back into the new stuff every week, and not just binge watching whenever I feel like it. And for me, revisiting old stuff. So just new content. Obviously, I have faith in, although he's not involved on a day-to-day basis anymore, I have a lot of faith that Brian Fuller, conceptually, he had a solid idea. I think he was developing it for a long time. At least that's my understanding. That he wanted to do this for years before he had the opportunity to actually, start developing it, with CBS. So my gut instinct is that this has been ruminating for a long time. So I have a lot of faith that this has been well thought out, and that it's a unique, cool idea, and I'm hoping that it breathes a lot of new life into Star Trek, kind of in the way that the Kelvin Timeline movies did, controversially in a lot of people's eyes. But I'm kind of hoping that this finds the balance of new energy, new stuff, some fresh takes, fresh ideas, fresh look maybe, but honoring what's come before enough to kind of please everybody, I'm hoping. So that's kind of what I think about, at least at this point. Like that's my hope.
Yeah, I'm really relieved that they kind of brought in some veterans that have experience in the prime timeline and stuff like that, instead of just bringing in a whole new guy. I think that kind of really aids in helping people have faith in the show, for sure.
Definitely. I think I'm sure most people who are watching this are probably familiar with the fact that, namely Nicholas Meyer is involved as a producer on the show. He's a writer on it, writer and director of Star Trek 2, Star Trek 6, wrote Star Trek 4, co-wrote Star Trek 4. So he's got some serious cred, some Trek cred, obviously. Joe Menosky was a producer on TNG and Voyager, wrote a handful of episodes of early Deep Space Nine as well. He's also a producer on Discovery. So it's a nice mix of some new faces, on the production team, along with, some old hands as well, who hopefully can, carry the torch from like the 90s, prime Star Trek era, the golden age, as I guess people call it, to maybe bridge the gap a little bit, keep it consistent, at least to some extent. So that's kind of the hope with that. And so I agree with you there. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Structurally, what do you hope to see from the show? I mean, do you want it to be, or do you envision it being really serialized? Do you like, your Trek more episodic? Are you looking forward to it being more serialized, if that's the way it goes, kind of more in line with modern TV?
Yeah. I like serialized, but I don't know. I'm just curious, like how the two ship kind of structure might go.
Yeah,
Because that's a little bit different than they've done in the past. It's always kind of been one
definitely.
ship. So I'm just curious to see how that is, but I'm also excited at the same time because it's kind of never been done. So I'll kind of see where they go with that. So yeah.
Yeah, me too. The two ship thing with the plot. I mean, we don't know anything about the plot, but
No.
seeing with the casting decisions the casting news that's come out, it's pretty obvious that there are two ships, two crews involved, two Starfleet crews. That's really interesting to me, like how structurally that's going to work. I'm excited about it. I think it's unique and different and cool. And there's a lot of, I'm not married to, the idea of it has to be one ship, one crew. So I'm open-minded to it for sure, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. And structurally, as far as like serialization goes, I'm all about, the modern, TV's great nowadays. There's a lot of great TV that capitalizes on serialized storytelling and, big storylines that, carry through episodes, carry through seasons. But at the same time, I do like, one of my favorite things about Star Trek is that it has the ability to be all kinds of different things. As great as some of those shows are, that people talk about in this kind of golden age of TV in general, as great as they are, you kind of know what you're tuning into every week. Like when you watch Thrones, when you watch The Walking Dead, shows like that really have huge followings. You know what to expect when you tune in. Tonally, structurally, the type of show you're getting is, to an extent, it's just kind of the same format every week. And I always appreciate that, Star Trek can do, big science fiction concept one week. They can do a romantic comedy the next. They can do an introspective character drama a week after that. Like, I like that it can bounce around. So I'm hoping that
Swiss Army knife. It could do as many things as it wants and, appeal to a wide variety of people and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that it finds a balance of, having big storytelling that can go through episodes, can carry through a season, but they can have some flexibility as far as that goes and not lose some of that Swiss Army knife quality that Star Trek's always had, going back to TOS. Like, episodes, week to week kind of had their own personality, and I think that keeps the audience on its toes. You never quite know what you're tuning into, and I think it's unique to Trek. So I'd like to see it maintain that somehow. I'm not looking for, early TNG, TOS, extreme episodic, no serialization by any means. I don't want episodes to be able to, you can watch them in any order, I'm not looking for that by any means. I want, modern TV to, storytelling. I think Star Trek is also uniquely built for that because it's so big and there's so much story and so much lore to hearken to.
Hmm.
It's built for these big storylines that modern TV is looking for. Um, but I do think there's a balance
Yeah.
to kind of satisfy everything, and I hope they walk it and find one that kind of works. But we'll see. I mean, I could, as long as it's good,
Yeah.
as long as
Yeah.
it's well written and the
Yeah.
characters are good and it's Star Trek to its core, I'll adapt to whatever the structure is. I'm not going to be heartbroken if it loses some of what I'm just talking about with being able to be anything week to week. If it's kicking butt on a weekly basis, and it's really good and unique and different, I'm on board. These are just kind of um, like we kind of introduced the episode as. It's just really initial thoughts.
Yeah.
It's going to be what it's going to be.
It
Um,
yeah, it has the tools, it has the foundation to be a great show.
mhm.
I just time will tell and see where they go with it. But I just think just the core that they have the tools to make a great show. It's just
They do, yeah.
yeah.
And I hope that CBS or CBS All Access or whatever creative arm of whatever it is running the show.
Yeah.
I hope they don't meddle too much. I hope they let the people who are running the show run the show,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
I hope they trust.
Trust the process. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't get too involved. Don't try
Yeah.
to pilot everything. Don't try
Yeah.
to satisfy all these boxes that need to be checked.
Yeah.
Um, Enterprise certainly suffered from that a bit. Um,
Hmm.
as much as I love it,
Yeah.
when networks get too involved, it can be challenging for any show. Um, so that's one thing I'm certainly ambivalent about.
Yeah.
The fact. Mhm,
So now that we've kind of touched on our hopes, I mean, this kind of
mhm.
leads into kind of our fears of the show. So what's your fear besides kind of what you just said? Uh,
Yeah, kind of just building off of that. It's I guess modern TV. It's certainly not like it was back in when TNG premiered. Um, I certainly wasn't conscious enough to. I was a baby. I wasn't around watching it week to week.
yeah.
But TNG certainly didn't get off running. To a fast start.
Hmm.
And I imagine that even in 1987, 1988, people were conscious of that. That it wasn't kicking butt right off the bat. That there were struggles, and I guess my big fear is that you know in today's TV landscape, you can't take 3 seasons to get going. It's got to be good off the bat, and in today's world, unlike the last time Star Trek was on TV, social media makes it easy for um, you know shows to be tagged in a negative fashion,
Hmm.
and for that to like perpetuate itself into you know just issues.
Yeah.
You don't want the show to get defensive about things that are being said on social media, and perceptions to be you know um, negatively impacting the show itself,
Hmm.
or put the show in danger of not surviving uh, beyond a season or two. And I think, as we all know, Star Trek fans are a unique bunch as far as accepting new stuff. Sometimes it takes time
Hmm.
for Trek fans to embrace new stuff. And I guess to answer your question, my biggest fear is that um, Star Trek fans might be their own worst enemy. They might not give it time. They might not. They
Yeah.
might jump on it and pounce and not be accepting, and that
Hmm.
might damage Discovery more than it damaged some of the shows that came before it, because just the world was so much more different,
Yeah.
without the social media allowing these things to get out there as much as they do now. And um, yeah, and I just don't think shows have time to find their footing like maybe they did back in the day. Um, what about you? Like, do you
Yeah.
have anything really
I'm
sticks
kind of the
out?
same boat. It's just like a fear that there's, especially in today's, like you talked about, in today's TV, that there's just so much pressure on it.
Hmm.
I I fear that I hope it doesn't try to be something that it's not. I really want it to. Um, definitely delve into different original content because there's also a lot of the shows kind of like take similar themes or similar episodes and kind of make it their own. But I think they need to
Yeah.
kind of step out and do something new. But at the same time, I fear that just kind of that corporate, you know,
Yeah.
takeover that they may not want something different. But I don't know. As a fan, I definitely want something different. So my fear
Me
is
too.
that they'll just stick to the same old, kind of just putting out another thing to try to make money and stuff like that. So I hope it doesn't get sucked into like the money making, the money printing process. I hope they actually
Hmm.
try to do something
Exactly.
original. But I think that they have the tools and the people that they want to do something original. So I'm excited about that. But um, yeah,
Yeah. As far as and I think anybody who's watched us up to this point can kind of tell that we're pretty positive guys when it comes to
hmm
Star Trek. We're
yeah,
not negative Nancy's.
no,
We're not haters by any means.
yeah,
So I think Dan and I both have pretty positive outlooks overall.
hmm
The things I'm looking forward to column are greatly outnumber the things that I'm like greatly fearful of. I'm excited about Discovery. I want it to get here. I want to see it. I want a trailer to look at and get excited about. And I'm open minded to things like um, there was a lot made of a picture that came out that may or may not have been Klingons looking not exactly like Klingons the way that we have seen them before.
hmm
Um, and you know, I'd be lying if I said that the first time I saw that I wasn't like, "Whoa, what are they doing?"
yeah,
Uh, my initial reaction was not entirely positive, and it's still very ambivalent about like things like that. I am resistant to certain things like that, um, but I'm open minded to it too. Like we don't know anything about the context of the show. We don't know anything about, you know, we don't know if they really are Klingons or not.
yeah,
So I try really hard to not let myself jump to conclusions and convince myself that it's going to be bad before I know anything about it.
yeah. Because
As far as like that goes.
yeah, we all have a personal bias. I mean, if especially when you're passionate
Yeah.
about this, about Star Trek and stuff, we all have a personal bias. But it's always important to realize that bias and kind of take a step back and say, okay, just
Hmm.
look at it from kind of an open-minded, like we were talking about. And I stress all of you
Right.
guys to do that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, really important to do it.
yeah,
It's especially like you just said. People, Star Trek fans, people who are watching this, watching us, who care enough about Star Trek to like seek out content like Trek Live and all the other platforms that are out there. Care about Star Trek to such a degree that it's so important to them that they have these preconceived notions that it has to be this, it has to be that. The Klingons have to look like this. Um, but you know, eh, to me, at the end of the day, what's important is that it's consistent with the principles that Star Trek's always stood for. That it's you know largely optimistic. That it's about us. That it's about humanity. If it's all those things and they change the way the Klingons look a little bit, you know, I'll take that over the Klingons look the same, but it's not Star Trek to its heart,
yeah.
then every day.
You
I
gotta have
think
that
that's
core,
that's
that
the
foundation of
trade-off.
Strike. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm much more interested in that, until up until the point that, Enterprise decided to try to explain away the difference in the look of Klingons and TOS and everything that came after it. Up until that
yeah,
point, the way I always reasoned it in my head was that when I watched TOS, it's kind of the equivalent of watching like a stage show. Like it's impressionistic. Like it's up to me to like fill in gaps and yeah, the sets look like not up to today's standards, but it's like watching a stage show.
hmm
It's not all there for you to like see with your eyes. It's to your mind's eye should take over to a certain extent and fill in and make it what you want it to be.
yeah,
And that's kind of how I always looked, and I continue to look at TOS. I forget that's how I can watch it and not allow, um, the '60s production, um, the production capabilities to bother me. I just kind of look at it that way, and
Yeah,
you know, it. Mhm.
for me, it's like I don't want the TV show to spoon feed me stuff. I would like to like have that thing like you're talking about. Let me fill in as the viewer. Let me
Yeah.
fill in the cracks and stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm willing to to let it play out and see what the show's about, see what it wants to be, what it wants to say about us, and um, how it extends the kind of Roddenberry um, lineage of what Star Trek is and always has been.
Yeah.
If it does those things in a positive way, um, I'm all in.
Yeah.
The aesthetic, the look of it, the you know the the flashy eye candy stuff is important, and it's a big part of why I love Star Trek for sure. Um, but that other stuff, the heart of it is what is going to bring me back and make it um, feel like Star Trek. Um,
Yeah.
so
So I don't know. Kind of looking back in the previous shows, how is it just a little bit different? Um, I don't know, just kind of the release because Discovery has come under fire for being uh, just kind of come under fire under because all the kind of delays and all these things and
mhm.
um, how is that different from kind of past I guess.
Well, from what I can remember, Enterprise was under some similar early fire. It wasn't delayed or anything like that, but just the very notion of it being a prequel and being set before Kirk, and
Yeah.
you know, when the first image of the NXL-1 came out, I remember there was a lot of uproar. It looks just like the Akira. They didn't do anything original. It shouldn't look like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negativity around Enterprise early on.
Hmm.
Uh, so this is certainly nothing new. As far as immediate reaction and maybe people jumping to conclusions a little bit. That it seems to be the pretty consistent standard when new Trek is coming. I wasn't around for TNG's early development,
Yeah.
and I can't remember. I wasn't conscious enough to know what people were saying about DS9 and Voyager, but
Yeah.
everything I've ever read, obviously TNG, there was a lot of resistance. They can't do Star Trek without Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Yeah.
Who's this bald guy? He can't be the captain. He doesn't look like Kirk.
Yeah.
And there was definite resistance then. Deep Space Nine, obviously people were, it's not on a ship. Like Roddenberry wouldn't want to do that. It's too dark.
Hmm.
There was resistance to that. Voyager, I'm sure people were, you know, it feels ridiculous now, obviously, and it was ridiculous then too. But there's a captain in the woman
Yeah, female
there's
captain.
a woman in the captain's chair.
Yeah. Yep.
Like there's always been naysayers before the show comes, and with Discovery, I get some of it. I'm frustrated with the delays too. It's been delayed twice now. That I can kind of understand. I don't think that happened to any of the other shows where like the release was continually pushed back and people kind of felt like they were like getting dragged along, I guess, a little bit by the network.
Yeah.
But some of the other criticisms that have come Discovery's way, about the concept, about the time, certainly nothing that's old hat, I would think.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think there's just kind of one big main difference for me, I guess, is kind of wildfire, and that wildfire being the internet, because once
Yeah.
something gets posted, just it's an explosion.
Mhm.
I mean, news travels fast. People can get it so fast. Like people, sneak into the studio,
Mhm.
try to get pictures and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and it can just So I think it's definitely a lot harder, um, to kind of release something like this nowadays
Yeah,
because the internet is so crazy and stuff like that. So I know they definitely have to deal with that
yeah,
a little bit differently than they would before. But
it's definitely true.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, the internet and social media changes everything when it comes to these kinds of projects. Like things like that picture leaking out. That was clearly not intentional. That was, some guy who, was working on the show as an extra or something,
yeah,
and who took a picture and posted it, and it started a huge. Um, it created all this controversy, and it
yeah,
wasn't the show's intention to like get that out there.
yeah.
Um, like that's not how I'm sure they intended to like reveal that whatever that
Yeah.
was. Um,
No, but I think the internet can be a kind of double-edged sword in that way because it can be a good way to, generate buzz and stuff like
yes,
that, but it's at the same
indeed.
time, it's so easy to leak stuff out and
Hmm.
stuff that you didn't mean to, and then people don't really know the whole full story and stuff like that. So it's definitely a beast, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I know from like the conversations you and I have had like offline, like not when we're not recording, um, Discovery's in desperate need of just like good news.
Oh yeah, yep,
Just like you know, I'm not naive to the fact that there's a system to this, and well qualified people I'm sure are behind the marketing of this and know when to do this and that. But it's in desperate need of like a trailer or something to like get people excited and talking about it in a way that's not negative, not about
yeah,
delays, not about CBS All Access, and they shouldn't like all the stuff that kind of comes along with that. Like it's
okay,
just
yeah,
so full of um, there's not a lot of really positive stuff to talk about because people just haven't seen um,
yeah, I know.
much.
And there's kind of
Um,
a kind of dark cloud off the distance with the Writers Guild and stuff like that. We don't know what's going to happen
yes,
with that. So
yeah,
that
definitely.
could be a wrench, but I don't really want to speculate
Hmm.
about that. But I mean,
Yeah, there's that could go any number of ways.
yeah,
If they do strike, depending on where they are in the production, nobody really knows. Like,
hmm,
we can all speculate about. You can certainly do really in-depth research through IMDb and looking at people's Twitter pages to kind of piece together, what episode are they filming now? You can kind of figure out, I guess, maybe roughly where in the production they are, but it seems pretty obvious that we're not in a position to really speculate about how a writer's strike
yeah,
could affect the show. But
yeah,
there's a good chance that it's going to, if it happens, that if they really do strike, that it's going to cause some sort of delay. And that stinks, but it's important to remember that that's not the show's fault. That's an industry animal.
yeah, exactly. They can't do
That's
anything
the
about that.
Yeah, it's going to affect a lot of shows.
Yeah,
And it's going to affect every show that's either in production now or getting ready to be in production. Um, so if that happens, it is what it is, and it stinks. But it's I think it's really important to keep it in perspective and not blame the show. Maybe the other delays had something to do with something
hmm,
that was going on with the production of the show, but this does not.
yeah,
And if it comes, people need to chill and
yeah,
relax, um, and just let it play out.
yeah. So, kind of moving on a little bit. I know
Mm-hmm.
that there has been a lot of buzz generated about the cast. I
Mm-hmm.
know traditionally it's kind of been um, kind of no names versus kind of bigger, not bigger stars, but well-known stars, kind of half and half. So no name, and then kind of some bigger stars. Kind of what's your overall thoughts on the cast right now?
I'm excited about the cast. I think it's a nice mix of people like Jason Isaacs, people like Michelle Yeoh, people like Sonequa Martin Green, who are pretty well established and people who have seen people who have been seen in you know big stuff outside of Star Trek. They're
Yeah.
pretty known commodities. They're clearly talented people. And then there's a pretty wide array of people who I'm not familiar with at all. Doug Jones is another one that people know
Hmm.
to some extent. He's been on a lot of his face isn't known, I guess, but he's done a lot of um, fairly big roles in movies like Pan's Labyrinth and stuff like that. So he's another one that I think is a pretty known
Yeah.
commodity.
Rain
But there's
Rain Wilson too.
Rainn Wilson,
Yeah.
being in as Harry Mudd, that's a big name. So they have a nice mix of people like that and people who we've never seen before. At least I've never seen before. Um, I'd be lying if I could rattle off their names right now, but um, they are like many of the other shows had. Nobody knew who I don't know Connor Trenier was going into Enterprise. Nobody
Yeah.
knew who Garrett Wong was going into Voyager. These guys were young actors who um, hadn't really made a mark yet, and I think
But
Discovery.
but I kind of like that because
Hmm.
these young actors kind of want to make a name for themselves. They
Yeah,
kind of want to put their best foot forward. So I think having that mix is definitely good for
definitely.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, and they're easy to accept as who they're playing because they're not. That's all you know them as. Coming into something like this, when Jason Isaacs comes on screen, a lot of people are going to see him and think about, you know, Harry Potter and
Yeah.
the Patriot, things he's been in the past.
Yeah.
These other actors don't have that challenge.
Mm.
The young, I can't, like I said, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but there's a young guy playing the helmsman, who I don't think, maybe I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find his IMDb page when he got cast.
Dang.
Um, like he's a legitimate like fresh face.
Yeah.
So he gets the opportunity to come in and just um, completely just have a blank slate and people just don't know what to expect out of him.
Yeah.
And Star Trek's really done a good job of going back to TOS, TNG, filling their cast with people who are like that. So I'm excited about it. I like a lot of the actors who I know about. I think they're good, talented people. They're not too big. They're not like huge names that come in and are like, wow, these guys are huge. But they're established and talented, and um, you kind of know what to expect out of them, mixed with some completely new faces. So,
Yeah.
what about you? I mean, are you familiar with um, any of them? Do you watch any of the shows that some of these other people have been in?
Um, I'm
Strong
kind of
opinions on any of
familiar with a few of them,
them?
but I definitely have faith in kind of the casting direction that they're going,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I don't know, they've always done a pretty good job in filling um, just the right actor for the right position for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited that they do have kind of like some big names like Rainn Wilson to kind of
Mm-hmm.
generate some buzz and stuff. And I think he's,
Definitely.
I've said this before, but I think he's perfect for the role.
Me too.
It is curious though. We were last night we were talking. We kind of looked up on the IMDb page. It's like Rainn Wilson's character. It says on there that says he's only on there for 9 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else 13. I don't know what that says. Maybe someone did put that in there or something like that. But it's just
Mm-hmm.
curious to see. Makes me want to go back and rewatch all the Mud
Mm-hmm.
episodes of TNG or TOS. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, that's definitely intrigued me a lot. Like my initial instinct when I heard that Rainn Wilson was going to be playing Harry Mudd was that it was going to be like kind of a one-off, maybe an episode or two, that he was going to come in and do a thing and then be out. And when I saw, like when you pointed that out to me, it says 9 episodes. That indicates that he's going to be kind of a heavy player in
Yeah,
at least the first season. Um, so that's really interesting.
yeah,
And it's just like further, there's just so much about it that we don't know.
yeah. It's
And
hard to
in a
nail
sense,
something
yeah,
down. Yeah,
yeah, and it's going to be interesting to like go back and see what we said, once it's out there,
yeah,
and there's actually things to talk about. Um, this is, largely speculative and like we said a couple of times, just kind of like planting our flag in the ground as
hmm
far as like starting point thoughts on Discovery. Um, but the more I see about it, the more I read. Um, I, Whenever there's a new piece of casting news, I get excited. I get giddy about it. I just I have a lot of faith. I've loved all of Star Trek up to this point.
hmm
Um, um, it would be a shocker to me if this came along and was, a disaster to the point where I rejected it. I don't think that's going to happen.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah. So
we'll see.
if you could kind of summarize your feelings of Discovery, just to kind of recap in one word. Kind of
In one word.
in one word, just your
Uh,
feelings.
Anxious.
Anxious.
Um, Anxious. I want it. I want more information. I want more to get excited about. I am excited, but there's certainly, because I love it so much. I'm very protective of it, of Star Trek as a whole.
Hmm.
There's definitely a some ambivalence about, well, what if it's not good? What if it's not what I value Star Trek as? Um, so anxious, I guess, is the best way to put it for me. What about you?
Hopeful. Yeah,
Hopeful.
hopeful. I think they have the right tools, right
Hmm.
people involved to get something done. I mean, at the end of the day, you could speculate all you want, you could hate all you want, but it's new Trek, so I'm
It's a new
hopeful.
track.
I'm hopeful for
Yep.
it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, I'm. Yeah. The sooner they get stuff out, the better. The sooner that we can, you know, maybe get some screenshots or, um, you know, a look at the newly apparently redesigned or retooled Discovery design, things like
Yeah.
that, that hopefully can get people excited and
Hmm.
have fresh, new, positive, hopefully positive things to talk about. Um, the better. And I'm sure you and I will be back on here, you know, talking about things as they come
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. What are we doing next week?
Next week we're going to finally be back live, actually live.
Finally.
Um, Trust us, guys. We are not huge fans of the pre-recorded
No, we've been
version of
itching,
Trek Live.
itching, itching for the live stuff
Yes,
because you
makes a
guys
huge
make the
difference.
show.
It really does. I
Yeah.
mean, like I've said a couple of different times, is every few weeks I feel like I say it. Dan and I could sit and do this anytime we want,
Hmm.
and we do. We do it
Yeah.
often. Um, so the live interaction with you guys is what makes this worth doing, and we're very anxious to get back into that. So next week we're gonna kind of give the show to you guys. We're going to open it up as a Q&A show. Where we can touch back on the episodes that we just did. We did the Kelvin timeline and this episode on Discovery. Initial thoughts, pre-recorded, so you guys didn't get to participate live with us. So the Q&A format should give you guys an opportunity to give us feedback on if you've gotten the opportunity to watch this and last week's, or if you just want to talk about those two topics. We'll be happy to continue to touch on them, and we'll answer anything. We'll talk Trek, kind of go loose format and be open to anything.
Yeah, and don't limit it to Trek. Also, you can do
Yeah.
film, anything
Hmm.
about life,
Get to
anything
know
like
us.
that, anything like that.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
And then once we get through that, that we'll be looking forward to delving into some bigger stuff. And next week we'll be ready to talk a little bit about maybe the first of those episodes where we'll be delving into some meatier stuff.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. There's going to be exciting stuff coming. We're really pumped and looking forward to jumping in and doing what we really want to do with Trek Live. So look forward to that.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely get excited because there's definitely get some good topics coming down the pipeline.
We do.
Some
Yep.
really exciting stuff with the channel and stuff like that. But guys, thanks for kind of bearing with us in this pre-recorded stuff. I know that sometimes during this live stream, the weathering system on Ryza was kind of malfunctioning and messing with the connections and stuff like that. Connection wasn't the best.
Yeah, the subspace transmission isn't always reliable.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll be back next week live.
Thankfully.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts or just wrap her on up?
Yeah, I think we're good. Like I said, definitely looking forward to being live again.
Yeah. So guys, definitely check social media for more Trek Live content and discussion. All the information is in the description down below. This has been episode 6. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Hey guys, we forgot one more thing.
And this is a big thing. While on Ryza, I had the opportunity to meet a Trek Live crew member. I met up with Jordan at I think on Ryza. He happened to be, well, no, he actually lives on Ryza.
Yeah.
So it was really cool getting to meet him in person.
Yeah, so
And
shout out to Jordan.
major shout out to Jordan. Got to hang out with him for a little over an hour, I think. Might have been a little longer than that, but it felt like 10 minutes. We talked track. We talked about life, everything.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It's the first time I ever got to meet anybody that I've interacted with on social media.
Man,
And
I'm
it
super
was
jealous that you got to do that.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
So again, shout out to Jordan. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come meet up with me, and it was a pleasure, and looking forward to doing it again. And hopefully you're here the next time we go live again, because you're a pleasure to have around, and you always bring good, interesting stuff to the conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you again.
All right, that's all we had. We just had one more
That's
thing. You guys know
Important
what to do.
thing.
We'll see you guys next time.
Yep. See ya.